And welcome to the Building Renaissance Leaders podcast. This evening, we're talking about motivation and inspiring teams. That's an interesting topic, given today where we are relative to what's happening in politics, the government, the world in general. It seems to be pretty much a mess, and you would think that corporations wouldn't be impacted by that because they have the ability to create their culture. They're not impacted so much by what the government and other people say. So that becomes a real issue when you start talking about motivation, because everybody you start thinking about motivation and you start thinking about inspiring people and teams and your organization in general, and you realize that they're already starting off at like almost ground zero. I mean, it appears to be a depressed environment all over, and that you would think that organizations and executives would be looking at this opportunity to really consider how are my employees feeling about the organization? What can I do to get them up at this point in time? But it doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, I was just reading a Gallup survey today that was not looking very good. It keeps going south in terms of perception of the organization, perception of leadership. You know, people are looking for more jobs. They're searching for different jobs to see if they can find one that has that culture. And I'm not sure you're going to find that many more companies that appear to be going that direction. Then, of course, we have somewhat of a radical administration coming in here, and there's no telling what they're going to do that's going to impact how people feel about companies and the work environment. Supposedly, everybody elected them to make things better, but there doesn't seem to be anything they're doing right now that appears to be making that happen. So uh, this is an interesting area today that I think is not going to just be relevant today. I think we're going to have this impacting us for the next 2, 3 years anyway, if not more. So uh, maybe at some point, leaders will grasp the idea that they have to do something about their organizations. Otherwise, it's going to be extremely difficult for them to be working in that organization. And so um, now, just before we leap into this, again, I want to remind you this is an educational podcast. And basically, what I do is I try to uh, create these podcasts so that you have what I call a digital repository. So I'm trying to think of new terms for library. It seems like library is going out of existence. So basically, what this is a place where you can go, possibly look up information that you might need that for somehow either slipped your mind or you haven't learned yet or whatever it might be. And so what building Renaissance leaders is about is the ability to provide you a place you can go with that doesn't have a firewall attached to it, paywall. So it has a firewall, but a paywall attached to it. Something you have to pay for to get extra stuff. That I'm not into trying to make this podcast and my channel like that. It's there for people to be able to find information that might be helpful for them, that'll help them learn how to be more effective in any of the leadership skills that you're going to end up trying to apply as a leader in environments like we're experiencing now, where you've got employees that aren't satisfied with leaders, they're not satisfied with organizations, and trying to find different jobs all over the place. And it's just not a healthy culture. It's a very toxic culture today. And so there's some things you can do if you are a leader or you want to be a leader, or if you're an executive and you're trying to figure this out. There's some, these podcasts are designed to provide you some resources to help you understand that. So let's kind of delve into the topic of motivation and inspiration. And so let me move over here where we can talk about it. So, uh, I guess if somebody were on here right now besides me, which doesn't seem to be prevalent, so I must not be a good podcaster. And I'm not trying to be a podcaster. I'm a leader and I'm an educator. So I'm just disappointed that people can't find their way in here and participate, because if you did, we would gain a lot of knowledge that I think would be useful for you. But it doesn't seem to be that people want to go that route. So I'm not going to change this process. So I'm just going to try to create these podcasts, and then people will have them. And a lot more people look at them after I complete the program. So, but it's a lot more interesting if I had people to discuss it with, discuss it with on the program. Um, so if you were on here and you wanted to talk about this, or if we were sitting across the table from each other and we were talking about this, I would basically be saying, what are your thoughts about inspiring people? What does that mean to you? Give me an idea of how you see that. And as an employee who works for somebody, most likely, um, what does it mean? What's it going to take for you to be inspired? That would be a question I would ask if we were having a dialogue about this, if we had somebody to have a dialogue with. Uh, I'd be interested to know what people feel like is going to inspire them today. And do you even know what inspire means? And then I would ask you the same thing about motivation. What is it that what do you think motivation is about today? Because I'm not sure people really grasp it. I'm not sure they have an understanding of what motivates them. I think they know what demotivates them. You know, they don't like commuting to work, and they don't like being away from their family, and they don't like to be locked up in an office, and they don't like not having flexibility to handle things that come and bug them during life. So those are some of the things that demotivate people, if you're looking at that, that make people frustrated about your corporation. I mean, I can read that just by going. I mean, any leader could go through comments associated with some of these things that are posted on LinkedIn and YouTube and Reddit and or any place else where you go to look at what people are thinking or saying. Um, you're going to find that those kinds of things I just mentioned are things that people formulate in what I think it's Allan Scrolls, I think, is a professor of psychology and neuroscience at the University of California, and specializes in brain activity, and basically is saying that those kinds of things I just mentioned, frustration with not being with the family and commuting and basically not having clear direction from their leadership. Those are kinds of things that you find coming out of their left brain thought processes, that side of the brain that's designed to kind of protect you and A lot of logic, language, for example, is part of something that's studied in the left brain. And you would suspect that things that would inspire and motivate people would probably be coming out of the right brain. And he basically says the right brain, let me see if I can, it says it's at the highest levels. This comes from a podcast that he did with Andrew Huberman. Was taking some notes. He says the highest levels of human nature are in the right brain. And it's interesting because he said the right brain is there with the conscious brain. It's there at the same time we have consciousness. So it's not like it's something that's hidden out down here and you have to go pull up and recall. The unconscious is prevalent with the consciousness and the right brain per se anyway from that standpoint. From what he's saying. And some of the things that he said are in the kinds of things we would find in the right brain are things like intuition, creativity, the ability to process something novel and new, the creativity, the innovativeness side of it, metaphors, imagination, studies, humor, music. Music is a big deal right now, and trying to help people cope with things. There's a lot of emphasis about music and what it can do, poetry and art and morality, compassion, spirituality, love. Let me give you a couple of other things I wrote down about what Allan Schore said about the right brain was that activities that allow us to drop into our right brain circuitry are new experiences with new people, new challenges, feeding curiosity, sharing novelty, exercise, restorative sleep. This is something where maybe you will sit back and close your eyes and you won't go to sleep, but you'll just be relaxed for about 20 minutes. And it's equivalent to getting something like a couple of hours worth of sleep. And you think about how this could be infused into corporations if you were an employee. And there's some neuroscience that says that we can handle about an hour or about 90 minutes, about an hour and a half worth of thoughtful, dedicated concentration. But after that, we begin to falter. We begin to lose our focus, so to speak. And this restorative um, sleep, this sort of relaxing for just 20 minutes, could re-kick off another hour and a half of this right brain activity we were just talking about, which is innovation, creativity, and allows you to focus a little more effectively. So just think about how employees would think if they could just stop what they were doing, lean back in their chair, and just kick off for about 20 minutes and then come back in. The amount of productivity, amount of innovation, amount of creativity that we can pull out of something like that in an organization would be phenomenal. But if you did that, I'm betting would be on top of your head immediately telling you, what the hell are you doing? You're sleeping on the job. So these are the things that are coming in the future that if we don't wake up to, we're going to find out that our workforce isn't going to be what we need it to be competitive. The companies aren't going to be doing anything that's to help employees feel better about the organization. This is one of those things that would be phenomenal. If I were sitting there with somebody, I would say, you need to allow people to do this. When they need it, you just need to allow them to do this. He also says about the right brain, there has been too much of an emphasis on the technique and therapy. The right brain process is key here to more than just technique. It is it is the unconsciousness is part of that right brain process, so that's what makes it there. But so the reason I'm saying this is because so much of what we're talking about, motivation and inspiration, really emanates out of this right brain process. That the parts of your brain that connect. It's not just the front of the right brain or the right brain as a whole, but all of the parts, the amygdala that's associated with the right side of the brain, that amygdala plus other things, all of these interactive pieces in your right brain are what create that sense of excitement about doing your job, excitement about being there and finding new and creative things like Allan said was part of this process. Finding new people, finding new events, finding new activities to get engaged in are part of some of the things that stimulate that right brain. It's also part of the things that allow your body to relax and become more inspired, more invigorated. You feel happier about things. So that's kind of why I was asking the question initially if somebody was on here. The question would be, do you really understand what's motivation mean to you? When I say motivation, what's that all about? What's inspiration about? What's different about those two things? So, since nobody is here, nobody is responding to that question on YouTube anyway, certainly not on LinkedIn because I think I cut them off before we got started really good. But if you're still on there, you're welcome to hop in here and answer on the chat. So a good way would be to dialogue between me and the chat. If you happen to be on this program and you want to participate with me live on here, I have the ability to bring you up here live, and we could chat about it that way and find some interesting things to say that people could learn and grow from out here who would be watching this. So or if they were watching this later, they would gain this knowledge. And from an asynchronous standpoint, it's a little harder to learn that way because you can't get answers to your questions. So if you saw something that I'm saying right now and it really interests you, I'm not here when you're watching this later. I'm not here to help you to answer those questions. Excuse me. I'm still reeling from allergies and that kind of stuff. That's part of the norm in Oklahoma. They're really known for that. But so let's talk about inspiration and motivation. Um, See if I can get this in here. There we go. Hmm. Well, I can do it this way, I guess. Okay. Motivation is a driving force that pushes you. It might be considered like a challenge that you are provided, something that excites you. If somebody says you can't do something, it's almost like it's a challenge. You want to do it, so that's kind of like a push. Uh, so this is what leaders have. They have ways of providing opportunities for people to get excited about trying to do something. And depending on who you are and what excites you, motivation is something that someone creates an opportunity for you to have, or you create that opportunity for yourself to have. So uh, it's a driving force that pushes individuals to move towards achieving goals or to accomplish something or to go to the next level. Some people are more intrinsically motivated, so they don't need someone else to try to drive that. They'll create their own challenges. Once they reach one goal, that's not enough. They got to do that either better or find something new and different that's as challenging. So those are intrinsically motivated people, and there are people like that. And those people most likely don't like leaders looking over their shoulders or trying to push them into things. They can make that happen themselves. An extrinsically motivated person is as you might think the opposite. It's 180 degrees from that. It's they like the idea of someone presenting the challenge, meeting that challenge, and then they kind of like the pat on the back when that challenge has been met, and they look forward to the next challenge that a leader might put down there in front of them. So motivation, by definition, is more like an incentive, a push kind of scenario to get folks excited and energized. It should be something that they enjoy, that they're learning from, they're growing from, they're excited about doing. And that's what a leader has to figure out in an organization. That's why you have to know your people well enough to decide what's going to inspire the team as a whole, what's going to inspire individuals within that team to want to move and improve and change and get better. So that's sort of what we mean by motivation. Inspiration is a spark that ignites passion and creativity. Now, passion and creativity are those things we find in the right brain. They are things, and so what happens when your right brain gets tickled, when all those neurons get tickled with some sort of creativity or some sort of passion or some sort of new object or change that's in your life all of a sudden, it releases the hormone called dopamine, and that's and dopamine is the thing that makes you feel good, that gives you a sense of feeling better. So the right brain is often stimulated, and that's that sense of feeling good and the sense of the newness is excited about doing something that's new or different, and the challenge of it. All of that is dopamine driven, and it provides you a pleasing kind of environment to be working in. When you're in those kinds of areas, people are excited, they're happy, they're feeling a sense of joy within their work. So that's where inspiration comes from. Inspiration is going to come from that feeling that there's something exciting about doing this. It's something that all of a sudden, maybe it's a new concept, or maybe it's learning something new, or maybe it's just that sense of doing something that you didn't think you could do, but you're doing pretty good at it. Those are the things that are inspirational about people, and they are mostly things that are associated with those right brain activities. Let me come back here and see if I can. You might find those in art, music, and imagination and creativity and things like that. As I'm looking up here at the list, those are some of the things that can create inspiration. I know you can get a really, really good feeling when that song that you like, you're not even listening to the words, maybe not even hearing the full dynamics of the music. You may not be trained in that to be able to do that, but it makes you just feel good. And it maybe bring back in some of those memories about people you loved or you cared about, or some of the things that you did in your life. that made you feel good at that time. Those are inspiring kinds of things. So we've got to figure out how to help people become inspired. We've got to help them feel inspired to want to do this, and we've got to provide the motivational tools, the opportunities for them to do these things, and to do them to the point where they can be successful and appreciate, enjoying doing those things. So, you can't. Motivation is something that you want to offer up that inspires people to voluntarily want to do those kinds of things. So that's probably a good way to put it. If you're looking about what's motivation, and again, I'm telling you that you have diverse workforce most likely, uh, and different people have different things that inspire them, and so finding that motivational opportunity, so to speak, for them to become more inspired, to get engaged and excited about doing something, is what a leader has to be able to provide those. Now, you can't do that. You just can't do that unless you are connecting with your people. You've got to connect with them. This is why interpersonal communication is so important to something like motivation and inspiration. It excuse me. It happens through connecting with others. You've got to make that connection. And if you're not, when you bring something up like motivation, it just is not sincere. It's not real to people. They don't feel like they're inspired to become motivated and do something, to take action and do something. They feel like they're forced into it, and you're trying to make it sound like it's a good thing, and to them it's not, because you're not connecting with them. You're not aligned with them. One of the things that I found interesting about Allan's presentation was his sense of understanding. Now, he was talking about it from a therapeutic standpoint, this ability to align with, or sort of get in line with the other person that you're trying to help. Not trying to push on them what you think they ought to do, but first having a discussion where you're almost aligned with them. You are linked. You're sensing some of what they're feeling yourself, and as you're discussing it and talking about it, you're helping them sort of discover these things because you're feeling them, because this is how you would change yourself if you were doing it, so to speak. Leaders are not much, they're not therapeutic, they're not psychologists, and they're not licensed practitioners to conduct psychology. But leaders, unlike you just having a relationship with your friend, leaders have a responsibility because they are provided authority over you. So when you're a leader, uh, you've got you're trying to get somebody to do something. You're trying to tell them. And many times you're telling them what they are doing wrong. Uh, but we tend to approach that in a way where it's, I'm the person who knows everything. You don't know anything. So listen to what I'm telling you. If you listen to what I'm telling you, you'll be okay. Well, if you think about that from a psychologist trying to tell somebody who's trying to get well, that's probably not going to be a very effective method. So in many ways, we are like psychologist, if you will. We are therapeutic as leaders in nature as opposed to coaching. If we were coaching, we would just be asking people to talk to us about this and how do you feel about this and explain what are your issues. And but as a leader, you've got to help people make that behavior change or want to turn that corner and make that behavior change. You're trying to get them to do the right thing. And you don't have a long period of time for them to make the transition into some of these areas. So as a leader, you have to almost become good at being able to line up your emotions with your people. So you need to kind of feel what they're feeling. If they're down, you need to talk with them and understand why they're down. You don't have to get down with them, but you have to know or sense what that emotion is that they're feeling. And it's not just an issue of um, being able to name or define that emotion. You kind of want to feel it because that gives you the sense of the intensity that's associated with the feeling. So when you're talking to them, it's kind of like, oh man, you're you seem so depressed, and so I'd like to understand. Tell me more about what that feeling is right now. What are you feeling? How what's it like? And as you discuss that, and then you're talking about now kind of what's causing this feeling. And if leaders did this more, they might find out they're the source of the depression. So that might be a little shocking and difficult to hear, but it then puts you at a point where you and that employee both understand there is something you're doing that is depressing them and making them feel bad. And now you can begin to talk about what that is. And then you might be able to figure out what you're doing that's causing that person to feel that depressed and uncomfortable. And then you can begin to understand, okay, I can't not let them decide they don't want to do what I tell them, but I can try to figure out how can I move this from this sort of threatening, frustrating activity into this more enjoyable, um, creative, exciting way of doing it. In other words, moving them from when they're down there and they're depressed and they're frustrated and they're trying to resist you, they are in a left brain mode. That's the side of the brain that protects us, that keeps us from being harmed, so to speak. But if you rest in there, if you stay in there all the time, which is a tendency for a lot of people, uh, then you're not allowing that opportunity to open your mind up to other ways to deal with this. And a leader has to figure out how to make that transition with their people. And they can't do it just by telling them. They have to understand that person and where that person is to be able to overcome them. Because otherwise, the person doesn't feel inspired. They don't feel encouraged to do this. They feel commanded and demanded to do it. And that's not a comfortable feeling when you're trying to get somebody to improve at something. It makes them continually feel incompetent, continually feel like they're not worthy. It's how you devalue an employee versus value an employee. Because what they understand quickly is you have the authority to fire them if they don't do what you say. Now, if the person is a potentially good person, and it's an issue of something either not knowing or feeling uncomfortable about doing it for some reason, if you can't get to the bottom of that, then it's going to be hard to get them excited and motivated to do other things, because now you're coming across as an authoritarian leader, a dictator, if you will, and you're managing through coercion versus compassion. Okay, and so inspiration, and motivation is extremely difficult uh, to implement if you have an environment like that, let alone just trying to do it with, say, a person that you need to be working with. So this is now, how does communication play relative to that? Because the way you talk to someone, the way you connect with them, is often determined by them to be either something they are open to hearing, want to hear, and truly understand. They're not shutting you down anywhere in that communication process. When you're talking to them verbally, and your facial features and your gestures, and if you kind of have a grin on your face, or your face is open to it versus grimaced, uh, those make a difference. Those make a difference in your capacity to connect effectively. And connecting effectively is critical if you're trying to get people to be inspired or motivated, or if you're trying to get someone out of a problem environment. Either way, either of those situations requires absolute, solid, good connection with other people. So it's essential, interpersonal communications essential in order to motivate and inspire employees. They have to feel like you have to feel their excitement and emotion, and you can't do that if you're not listening to them, or if you're not processing the communication, or frankly if you're not just there, if you're trying to motivate somebody through a text message or an email or a sticky note, you know or even over a telephone. It's hard to do. You can't sense them. You can't get that connection that you need. And this is something we've been missing for so many years in leaders, because they've got this thing about, I've got to get these things done. I got to get things out. And yes, you do. But the likelihood you're going to get them out faster and better has been proven over and over again to be more associated with a pleasing, open, pleasant, approachable leader who is competent and takes the time and has compassion and wants to help this person to be successful, feels them wanting to be successful, and that person can feel your desire to make them want to be successful. They feel it. They don't hear it. They don't just hear it from you. They feel it from you. But it's hard to have that feeling if you're not there, if you're not connected, if you're not doing in some way being able to help them. There's no way it is satisfying for me to try to help you if you're not on here with me. If you're watching this, I'm sorry, I'm probably not getting through to you. That's a real shame, because I think I can help you sometimes. But this is the choice that people are making. They're moving farther and farther away from connecting effectively. And social media does that. And separating from people does that. You can't resolve an argument if you're not there with the other person. Walking away from it and leaving it just die is not resolving an argument. It's not resolving conflict. That's what we learned about conflict. So some of the things we're talking about this whole communication process, this system, and how it impacts all the rest of what you do when you communicate and when you connect with other people, it all kind of is necessary to understand and work in unison with each other. You've got to come across effectively in your message when you're talking to somebody. You have to use nonverbal communication and all the cues that go with that, along with the words you select and how you say those words, the vocalics we called it, which is really a nonverbal cue, the tone, the pitch, all those kinds of things. All of that has to kind of come together in unison for that one person to receive that message in a way they can really feel how you want them to do it. They don't just hear what you're saying, they feel that emotion you have in wanting this to be done and how badly you want to help them get it done correctly. Okay. So we're now, and so feedback now becomes a loop. So if I have no feedback here right now, so I don't know if I'm getting across to you or not. Um, but it would be nice to have a dialogue so we could see what it feels like to talk with somebody and then to begin to feel your emotions and not just hear your emotions. It's part of what the right brain is looking for. And that's the most productive and exciting part of our brain. It's the creative, the innovative side, it gives you room to grow and do things differently and feel good about it, want to do it. So you've got to have these tools for communication, and we need it in conflict. And I'm now telling you this connection and being able to connect is critical to inspiring people and motivating people and making them feel valued in their workload and as an employee. Really important to you and the company. We don't hear that from employees anymore, and we don't hear it because guess what, leader, Mr. CEO, if you're watching this, you're not connected. You're probably farther apart from your people than ever before. You're not down there with them. I've talked with people when I'm talking with them in a restaurant or something. I'm getting to know them and say, "What work do you do?" And they tell me, and I will say, "Well, tell me about your leader," and they tell me a little bit about the leader, as if the leader even spends time with them. When I ask about the CEO, they may not even know the CEO's name, or they may not know any of the other directors or vice president's name in the corporation. They don't ever they contact them. They don't ever connect with them. They've got, for some reason, we keep saying we don't want to be siloed, and we keep siloing ourselves more. We're isolated to marketing, or we're isolated to human resources, or we're isolated to operations. I couldn't even tell you how somebody in marketing feels if I were in human resources. Or maybe human resource, because they're supposed to try to get around to everybody, but they're becoming less and less known for that today. Becoming more known for how do I protect this company from employees if they have a problem. Um, there's more of that than there is employees down here don't feel valued. I need to go up and uh, you know throw cold water on the vice president so they wake up and see that there's a problem. You don't see that much out of HR anymore. It used to be what its goal was, but that might have been almost 50 years ago. So now, so we know what motivation is. That's the push. We know inspiration is that spark that's generated out of that right brain, exciting dopamine kind of activity. We know you can't get either one of those in gear or effective for you as a leader unless you can connect to people effectively. And we're failing at that. We're not doing good at that. We don't even teach it in high school. Gosh, I would love to be able to have this program that I have taught all through high school. At least when they got out of high school, they'd know what communication really is about and how to connect and the importance to connect. And all of these things that I'm explaining to you now are important for you to know in order to motivate people. High school students would have a shot at that coming out of high school. How about that? How about we spend time doing that in school? That's as much of a skill as math or science, okay, or arts, literature, music. It's a skill that everyday people tell me they have a problem with their leader. Every day I keep telling you this over and over, and I probably will all through the 12 sections. But so, what are some of the key communication tools for motivating and inspiring employees? So, I'm going to provide you some things here. Uh, if you're not here to ask me the question, there's a couple of ways you can get to me. One, you can put a comment in, and I might respond to the comment if I see it. Another is you can schedule an appointment with me to talk about it. And we can talk about it and really have a dialogue about it that we should be having right now, but nobody's there. So that's okay. As long as somebody can get to me and get the information that they need. If I got two people, I'm excited. I'm excited. That's two more people out there that might be more effective as leaders. Um, so I'll take that. Uh, I'm not looking for the money out of this. I'm looking for us to improve this whole damn image of corporations being just cold hearted is the best way I can say it. So, clearly defining roles, responsibilities, and clear, concise language. You hear this all the time. And when I talk to employees, they still don't hear it. They can't tell me what their defined, clearly defined roles and responsibilities are. They can't. I asked this to people when I was interviewing them. See, my deal is I left the business world almost 18 years ago. I retired for 15 years. About 5 years ago, or maybe 6 years now, I started looking at leadership saying, I'm looking for all the exciting things that change. I didn't see any exciting things change. In fact, I think I saw things basically the same and getting worse. And so that's when I started talking to as many people as I could. I just kept talking. Then I can't take notes while I'm talking to them because it's more of a casual conversation. I don't want them thinking I'm doing a research study. So I would go home and I would try to write down, some of the things that people were saying about how they feel about this and what's going on. And it kept coming back to, for some reason, people are not connecting with their leaders. There's no sense of leadership's need to feel like they need to connect with the people. It's almost like uh, if you don't do what I tell you, I will fire you and I'll put somebody else. There's plenty of people out there looking for jobs. Well, after the 2020 pandemic, there weren't that many people looking for jobs anymore. And it almost became a crisis. And now we're trying to move back into that way again. And we're not using this as an opportunity to change and go forward. So, um, again, I tell you, I talk to these people, I ask them, can you kind of define what your responsibilities are? They can generally tell me what they do in their job. But when we get into the discussion, is do you know everything you need to know? Do you have the information coming to you need? No, that's where it all breaks down. So, yeah, they could quote what was written about their job description, but what they need to know to make that to happen is less known to them. So that's one way to think about this. You got to go deeper than just putting it in writing and telling this person this is their job and saying, now go do it. You need to understand how where they are when you do that with them, and what they think they need, and what they think they're missing, and they need to feel comfortable to be able to come to the leader and get the help they need. There's always this need to validate clarity through active listening. Now, if you've heard me on the previous podcast, you know that I don't think active listening is something you're engaged in all the time. It's something that's probably reserved mostly for critical issues or incidents or communication. Um, but there is this need when you are communicating with somebody, leaving the communication with a sense or understanding that both of you agree with what we think this conversation is about, and come to a conclusion about thinking the same thing about the conversation. And that's where this sense of how you provide your communication becomes important, and how that person assigns meaning to what you say, and how you assign meaning to what they say, and and this idea of connecting in the standpoint of understanding not just the words that are said, but the feelings, the emotions, the energy behind that conversation is important. When you have that connection, likelihood is things are going to go a lot smoother. You got to provide consistent and congruent feedback, and you got to seek that feedback. So, what happens with feedback is it lets you know if what you said was understood. And if it wasn't understood, you can keep the dialogue going until you reach a point where you both have common understanding. That's the purpose of feedback. It isn't to say, hey, I told them to do something and they told me they knew how to do it. That's a defensive posture, probably meant to minimize liability in an organization. You know, there's more to the feedback process than just the active listening part of just hearing what they say. I keep telling people again, this connection is a lot about uh, feeling comfortable, feeling good about what you said. You'll see that when people are intent or they're looking at you while you're talking to them and you're explaining something and they're going, yeah, okay. Or are they going, I got it. I finally understand what you're saying. Okay, thanks for taking the time to explain it that way. I needed that. I needed those examples, for example. And it makes me feel I think I can go this, and I'll come let you know if I have a problem. That's a pretty positive feedback response versus okay, yep, that's a different feedback response. That's one you don't want to be hearing when you're laying out clear, concise responsibilities. Proficiency in applying and reading nonverbal communication behavior. This is where you get that sense of emotion. All of the things, the nonverbal things that we talk about, and you'd have to go back and pick up the podcast, but there's what we call haptics, touch. You know, touch has a specific time and a place where it's highly effective. It can be highly threatening if it's done the wrong way, but most of the time it's highly effective. When you shake somebody's hands, that's a greeting, okay? So there's haptics, there's touch, there's this sense of proximity, how close you are to somebody. And then you can combine those. For example, when you feel something about somebody and they you want them to feel really good or better than they're feeling, you wrap your arms around them and you hold them tight against you and you hug them. That hug creates a message from a nonverbal perspective that impacts your right brain, it impacts your brain, your nervous system, and the rest of your body. You feel negativity. You can almost feel it drain from your body when you get hugged. I know when my granddaughter gives me a hug, I tell her to hug me tight and hug me hard because it drains all of everything that was negative or all I experienced negative, and that whole day seems to just melt away from me when she hugs me. That is the kind of thing that nonverbal communication applied correctly can do. You cannot get that. If she sends me a an emoji hug during a text message, sorry, it doesn't do the same thing that her wrapping her arms around me and squeezing me tightly does. It's because that's what we're geared for. We're geared for that connection. It tells us where you really are, so to speak. You can't have a lot of communication without the emotion attached, folks. Even as a leader, you can't. Because when you do, you're minimizing so much of what can be so powerful in helping people to become inspired or motivated. So proficiency in applying and reading nonverbal communication is very important. It'll tell you what's going on in a lot of cases, and without you having to say anything. But you have to be there. You have to see it. You have to establish and maintain trust through the use of effective interpersonal communication. We talked about that. Go back and look at that area. That is all about balancing harm. That is all about balancing harm. So, and it's something that leadership and organizations start out in the hole with and have to overcome. You have to earn the trust of your employees. You cannot command it from your leadership role. Okay. So, understanding the team through frequent effective communication. You got to understand the team as a whole. All of them come from different perspectives. This is why when you start expanding the span of control to a large group of people, it becomes extremely more difficult for leadership to handle those. I noticed that was one of the things that Amazon um, said they wanted to do is expand the control from 10 or 8 people to 20, 25 people. And this would be my first question. Do you understand the dynamics of what you do when you expand your span of control? You put 25 people under somebody, the pressure you put on them to being able to understand and know all of those 25 people well enough to connect the way I'm telling you you need to connect to be effective and helping employees become better at their job, becoming more engaged with the company, feeling more comfortable with you as a leader, and feeling like, maybe this is the better of all the other places to work. When your actions you take speak a lot about what people perceive you think of them. And that's a nonverbal cue right there when you start expanding spans of control beyond where people feel comfortable and relating. There's a reason we say a team ought to be about 6 to 8 people. There's a reason for that. It's the span of control is the same thing. Create an inclusive culture that supports various culture diversity as well as capabilities. This is about inclusivity, not about race, not about, it's about a person, not about the race of that person, whether that's a female or any other thing you want to try to tag them with. It's about that individual and where they're coming from and who they are. Again, if you have a vast, diverse working group, you've got a lot of things that are going to get in the way of you effectively communicating with them. And you need to work through how you're going to overcome all those issues. The likelihood of you hiring everybody like you is going to be pretty slim. There's some companies that try it. There's some companies that, they don't want you if you don't believe in God. They don't want you if, you're a minority. They don't want you if, you're a female. Females, we're going back to looking in the military that females can't handle combat. Well, there's a few people on Congress who are females who may argue that, who suffered a lot in combat. So those are things you have to be able to grasp if you're going to create something that motivates a full team, something the whole team can get around. You have to even work as a leader, you have to even work them through what you have to work through with each of the individuals in that team. You have to work that team into understanding each other well enough to work as that diversified team. Because that diversity is probably going to give you a lot of the things that we say are good and right brains, like creativity, innovation, different thought processes, different approaches to things, all those exciting things that come out of the collaboration in a team often come from diversity. And diversity is more in all those minority issues. There are things about how somebody learns, whether they're ADHD oriented, perhaps, or maybe they're dyslexics, or maybe so they may be neurodivergent. There are things like that that you have to understand and know and pick up as a leader. There has to be things that you as a leader want to learn and know. If you don't go into leadership, folks. This is the wrong field for you. It's not that you're not good at it, something for sure. You're just not going to be good at leadership unless you're willing to embrace some of this stuff. The effective use of interpersonal communication, emotional intelligence. When you have that, you can establish a strong rapport and relationship with your team members. I ran into a team one time. They were working pretty well. We were working on some team building aspects, and I was pretty impressed with them. And I asked them, "What is it?" And they said, "I don't know. We just know each other well enough. We can almost finish each other's sentences." And they do this amongst themselves. That team was set. The last thing they needed was a team building program. In fact, we didn't finish it. We worked on some other things like process management that they didn't know. I brought in a process management person. Says, well, do you think this guy can help you? Yeah, good. Okay, because you're already a team. See you later. That was during a culture project I was working on. It was fascinating. It was very exciting to feel when I started the program. I didn't even get an hour into it, and we just stopped doing team building and spent the day talking about some things that they thought I might be able to help them with some of the other assets I had available to them, and and that was exciting. I mean, I just walked back and told the executive team or that executive vice president, we don't need team building with this group, and they're going, oh wow, okay. And he didn't even realize how well they were gelling. That was what bothered me the most about that conversation. But he got there. He got there because he was taking some of this communication I'm talking about, and he was beginning to connect more with all of his people. All of his people. But that would be an example of things I hear sometimes that tell me, yeah, you need communication course. You don't need a course in finance. You need a course in strategy. You're not even get that done because you can have all that stuff and your people aren't going to deliver it. So those are things that we were able to talk about exciting things with the executive team when you're working on projects like a full corporate transformation. But these are all things. Understand the diversity, work with the diversity, get to know those people, not just from a racial or a gender perspective. Get to know how they think, what's different about their thinking, about how they communicate, what's different about what excites them and doesn't excite them, what's different about what motivates them. I saw teams that were motivated differently from different perspectives throughout an organization. And they're all out there. And you have to be able, as a leader, to sense all of that and work through that so you're applying the right motivational energy that inspires them to go get excited. Effective communication techniques for motivating a team. The use and encouragement of active listening. We talked about feedback. Just understand the whole system and apply the whole system effectively will help them get all of their skills accomplished more effectively. That's the idea behind this. When you do that, when you get this connectivity aspect I'm talking about, and it really works, you begin to become collegial, you begin to become collaborative. You sense it creates an inspiration in you to operate as a team. It makes you excited, you feel good. Dopamine is running all over the place, you know? And there are teams we've had to tell them to go home at night sometimes. You know, we had to do something to put serotonin in their life, that hormone out of the brain, so they calm down and go home and go to bed and go to sleep and get some rest. Because the next day they'd be exhausted if they didn't. By encouraging frequent, open, and transparent communication, you establish trust that leads to culture that optimizes everyone on the team, ensuring inclusivity of all team members, including the leader. And not when you're the leader of the team, when you are part of the team. That's the exciting part of reaching the pinnacle of this activity I'm talking about communicating effectively and connecting effectively. You are not the leader. You are part of the team. Your role may be leader, but that's secondary to how they think about you. They just think of you as part of the team. God, that's a great feeling. It really is when you do it. The power of interpersonal communication to inspire. Let's talk about this inspiring side. The uses of assertive communication. You must understand the importance of effective interpersonal communication uh, in a leadership's role. That's what I mean by assertive communication. All the stuff I've been talking to you about to this point is assertive communication. You are applying it. You are actively engaged in it. You are actively requiring it of others. It's assertive. It's not passive. You're not laying back, waiting for everything to happen. You're engaged. You're part of it, and you're demonstrating it. When you do it effectively, you are then demonstrating it to all your employees, and you're giving them a present in their life that they'll be able to use in so many ways outside of just their job. Think about this. In a lot of corporations, there are employees who work for the same department doing the same job for 15, 16, 17, 18 years or more. How many leaders do you think those employees endure during that time? And I mean endure. They put up with them. And occasionally, one of those leaders that maybe 3, 4, 5 of them, maybe one of those leaders comes through, and that is the leader that becomes them, becomes part of them. That is the leader. They empower them to motivate them, to inspire them, to get them excited and get them onto the path that they would love to be on for the rest of their career. And when that person leaves to take a better job, it's painful. It's painful for those people because, one, God, they had that. They had what they wanted in a job. They would never go look for another job. It gets promoted. They don't know what's next. They don't know what's next because the organization has not set the standard to say that leader they had is the leader they want all the time in that department. Even if you didn't do it through the whole corporation, at least that department. But you won't see the organizations do that. They don't think. This paradigm of leadership today, they don't think in those terms. And until we change, it's going to be hard on employees, harder than leaders. Interpersonal communication is actually the foundation of relationship building. We're going to go through these pretty quickly. As the leader it is your responsibility to ensure everyone feels heard, feels valued, and is motivated. Can't do that if you are not connected. Can't do that if you're not connected. It's just that simple. That's how important this communication is. The communication, I'm getting excited here, losing my voice. That communication is so important to everybody, but that you can't do this. You can't make them feel valued if you can't reach them. If you don't reach them, you lose them. You may not lose their employment, you just lose them. So much more they could do, so much more they would be excited about doing. You don't give them a chance. You just lock into that leadership, standard leadership role, and the title goes on the door. The frequency of interaction declines. When you do get together, it's it's not anywhere close to being connected. I've run into so many situations like that, so many situations, and they can be overcome. I've seen them overcome. I've told you about a couple. So the key aspect of assertive communication is motivating and inspiring employees. Communication strategies focus on the right brain things, the positive things that I mentioned, excitement, humor, creativity, energy, all those kinds of things that Allan Schore said so well. I mean, they just represent so much. Um, I will try to drop that list in the description of this video. That's how important I want you. These are the things that when you communicate effectively, you can totally in in invade that right brain to the point where you're really using it to maximum effectiveness. It is an exciting thing to see when it's happening. And I want you to see all of the things you ought to be focusing on as a leader, because these are it. These are it. So I'll do that for you. Communication strategies foster creativity, collaboration, innovation. I could spell innovation, right? Communicating your vision and mission clearly and compassionately leads to achieving common goals and objectives through collaboration. Think about how I talked about that one team where that leader was just immersed into the team. Think about an organization that had its total leadership immersed in it, and the leader and the CEO were equally immersed. Think about what that company would look like. There are very few of them out there, and there could be so many more. There could be so many more. You have to adjust where your thinking is when it comes to your leadership role. And we're not there yet. The current paradigm we're using is failing us miserably. The new one needs to be talking like I am talking to you now, where we are now, what we need now, before it hits us in the face and we're not able to cope with it. So, effective use of the total interpersonal communication process, it creates trust among your team members. It helps you to provide feedback and active listen and create a sense of team members' thoughts and ideas and feelings and them being valued, and you can feel them. You have a feeling. The emotion is overwhelming. So it's overwhelming. The effective use of the interpersonal communication system, if you do these things, this is what gets me. If you do these things, the effective use of communication system can reduce conflicts, promote creativity, solve problems better. What a world to live in. What a world that would be to live in. Damn, if we could get governments in this world we're living in right now to grasp this concept, maybe it'd be a decent world to live in. What do you think? There's so much we would pull out of that concept is amazing. Yeah, I think of it at the micro level as a team, and I watch that team. I get excited about what I saw in that team. And I think, why can't we just expand this to the whole world? Why can't we move this up? What's preventing us from doing it? It's us. It's us. So I have a couple of key points. In this fast paced and changing world, effective interpersonal communication can create inclusive cultures that builds trust and optimizes everyone on the team and see them as valued, important, excited, energized people that are inspired and engaged and seek high performance for themselves, the company, and everyone else involved. Customers, vendors, everybody benefits from this. Everybody benefits from this. Effective interpersonal communication leads to greater trust, a balance of power, inclusivity, being valued, a sense of accomplishment, and growth, which enhance employee engagement and satisfaction. It's why people like to go to work, or at least used to. Really enjoyed it. Wasn't a burden going in there. I enjoyed it. I look forward to it. I worked around some really good people. I had so much fun. I learned so much. I grew so much. I benefited so much. Can you say that today? If you can't, you got a problem on your hands, folks. Now, you can reach me at that email address if you have comments or you want to know something more after you see this. Um, Also, I'd like you to subscribe and all the things you're supposed to do on YouTube. Subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss one of these things. It's hard enough for me to get them. Obviously, technically competent person here, non-technically competent person, getting it off and started. Once I get into it, I can think I can handle it past that. But it sometimes it's just you know things go wrong. But I really would like you to subscribe and become part of this and start learning from these things. This one podcast right here is one, frankly, if you're down and out, you feel uncomfortable, go back and listen to this podcast and figure out who you need to be and how you need to be it and how you intend to connect more effectively by becoming more proficient at interpersonally communicating with other people. And don't isolate yourself into a computer or a room. Get out and meet other people. That's where one of the things that Allan Schore said here about opening your right brain, which releases all that dopamine, which really makes you feel good all the time, is get out and get involved and excited with new and different experiences and people. That's one of those things you can do. Do this for your people. Get out of the damn office and go down and be with them. If you're an executive, what would happen if you gave up your C suite office and you took an office down with your people right in the middle of them? What are you saying to those people? What are you saying to those other executives? Will be interesting because I'm betting the person who does that begins to be the department that everyone wants to be like in that company. I've seen that happen. Every culture transformation I ever did, every activity associated with building a better environment I did started in a department or a team, and it became infectious. It had infected the rest of the organization. What are they doing? How can I be like them? You can be like them by doing what they do, learning what they learn, believing, and open your mind, open that right brain up a little bit. Get excited about, get rid of all the trappings that go along with leadership and become a leader. Try that. That might help. Okay, until the next time. I hope somewhere along the way we'll get some people joining me here and not watching this afterwards because it's much more exciting. It's much more beneficial if I can talk with you and I can reach you. Okay? Till then, here's hoping you do better.